The story commences with an enigmatic scene featuring an unseen individual crafting an unusual weapon, a glove adorned with razor-sharp knives for fingers. Tina, a young girl clad in a nightgown, dashes through ominous alleyways filled with steam and shadows. Abruptly, the mysterious figure pounces on her, wielding the menacing glove. Tina's startled cry jolts her awake. The entire ordeal was merely a nightmare. Rushing to her aid, Tina's mother notices her torn nightgown, bearing cuts akin to those in Tina's dream. The next morning at school, Tina reunites with her friends, her boyfriend Rod, her confidant Nancy, and Nancy's boyfriend Glenn. Discovering that they've all experienced the same nightmare, Tina and Nancy grow apprehensive, despite attempts by Rod and Glenn to downplay their own experiences. That evening, Nancy and Glenn opt to stay with Tina in her mother's absence. However, Rod's arrival later in the night startles them, his antics in the backyard adding to their unease. While Tina and Rod retire upstairs, Nancy and Glenn downstairs resist the notion of intimacy, intent on supporting Tina. As the night progresses, eerie occurrences unfold. Nancy perceives a spectral figure hovering over her bed, yet her half-sleeping state obscures the vision. Meanwhile, Tina, disturbed by noises at her window, confronts her tormentor in the backyard, only to be drawn into a nightmarish confrontation mirroring her dreams. In her room, Tina's nightmare intensifies, seemingly merging with reality as she grapples with an unseen force. Rod, awakening to the turmoil, witnesses Tina's gruesome demise at the hands of an invisible assailant. At the police station, Nancy recounts the events to her father, Lieutenant Donald Thompson, though her claims of a supernatural killer are met with skepticism. With Rod imprisoned as the prime suspect, Nancy staunchly defends his innocence. However, subsequent events, Glenn's untimely demise and Nancy's harrowing encounters, further corroborate her suspicions of an evil force haunting their dreams. Delving into her family's past, Nancy uncovers the truth about Fred Krueger, a notorious child murderer whom her parents and others in the community had taken justice into their own hands years ago. Now, facing Freddy's vengeful spirit, Nancy realizes she must confront him alone. Despite her father's doubts, Nancy orchestrates a plan to trap Freddy in the real world, culminating in a fiery showdown that ultimately vanquishes the nightmare. Yet, as Nancy bids farewell to her mother and heads to school with her friends, a chilling twist ensues, hinting at Freddy's lingering presence and the haunting legacy he leaves behind. As Nancy and her friends embark on their journey to school, the atmosphere is tinged with an eerie tension, overshadowed by the recent horrors they've endured. Marge, Nancy's mother, stands on the porch, bidding them farewell with an air of normalcy, unaware of the lingering threat that looms over them. As Glenn's car pulls away, the convertible roof suddenly slams shut, ensnaring the group within its confines. Panic grips them as they realize they're trapped, the roof ominously colored in red and green, reminiscent of Freddy's sweater. Their frantic attempts to escape are futile as the windows seal shut, sealing their fate. In a surreal twist, Marge is abruptly yanked from the porch, disappearing into the nightmarish tableau unfolding before them. The once serene scene is now engulfed in chaos as Freddy's menacing presence manifests itself, shattering any semblance of normalcy. With their worst fears realized, Nancy and her friends find themselves ensnared in Freddy's twisted realm once again, their fate uncertain as they confront the lingering horrors of Elm Street.
In a series of bizarre and alarming events, the small town of Springwood, Ohio, has been shaken to its core by a string of unexplained occurrences that have left residents on edge. Reports have flooded in detailing mysterious deaths and inexplicable phenomena, all seemingly connected to the tragic demise of a local teenager, Nancy Thompson. The young woman's untimely passing has sparked widespread speculation and concern among the townsfolk. Nancy Thompson, a well-respected student at Springwood High School, was found lifeless in her home under puzzling circumstances. Authorities initially attributed her death to a tragic accident, but as more evidence surfaces, questions have arisen regarding the true nature of the incident. According to sources close to the investigation, Nancy Thompson had been plagued by vivid and disturbing nightmares in the days leading up to her demise, with fear and uncertainty gripping the community. Springwood residents wonder if they are truly safe.
5 years have passed since Nancy Thompson's courageous battle against Freddy Krueger in the sinister house on Elm Street. The Walsh family, consisting of 17-year-old Jesse, his parents, and his sister Angela, has just moved in, unaware of the dark forces lurking within their new home. Jesse's nights are plagued by haunting nightmares, a disturbing precursor to the horrors that await. As the temperature inexplicably soars on a cool night, household appliances malfunction, and flames erupt without warning, signaling the malevolent presence haunting their abode. Seeking solace and answers, Jesse confides in his new girlfriend Lisa, and together they unearth the grisly history of the house and its connection to the infamous child murderer, Freddy Krueger. Meanwhile, Jesse's dreams grow increasingly sinister, blurring the lines between reality and the nightmare realm. Freddy's ominous presence looms, whispering malevolent intentions and pushing Jesse to the brink of despair. Despite Lisa's attempts to rationalize the occurrences, Jesse feels himself slipping under Freddy's influence, his sanity hanging by a thread. In a nightmarish vision, Jesse witnesses the brutal murder of his gym teacher, a premonition that becomes all too real the following day. Consumed by fear and guilt, Jesse spirals into paranoia, alienating himself from his loved ones as Freddy's grip tightens. Desperate to protect Lisa, Jesse's attempt at intimacy unleashes Freddy's wrath, forcing him to flee in terror. Seeking refuge with his friend Grady, Jesse's nightmare takes a gruesome turn as Freddy emerges from within him, leaving devastation in his wake. As Grady falls victim to the fiend, Jesse's anguish deepens, his humanity slipping away. In a heart-wrenching moment, Jesse confides in Lisa, warning her of the darkness consuming him. Yet as Freddy's hold tightens, Lisa refuses to abandon him, determined to help him fight the malevolent force within. Their love becomes a beacon of hope amidst the darkness, sparking a final confrontation with Freddy. As Freddy's rampage escalates, Lisa leads Jesse to the old power plant, where their love becomes Jesse's salvation. With Lisa's unwavering support, Jesse confronts Freddy, invoking an inner strength that proves to be his salvation. In a fiery climax, Freddy is vanquished, his hold on Jesse finally broken. But as peace seems within reach, Freddy's malevolent spirit refuses to be extinguished, unleashing terror once more. With a horrific twist of fate, Jesse and Lisa's newfound tranquility is shattered as Freddy's clawed glove bursts through their friend Carrie's chest, signaling the beginning of a new nightmare. As the bus hurtles towards the unknown, Jesse and Lisa brace themselves for the horrors that lie ahead, knowing that the battle against Freddy Krueger is far from over. The story begins with a young girl, Kristen Parker, creating a papier-mâché model of 1428 Elm Street. The house, originally inhabited by Nancy and Jesse from the preceding Nightmare on Elm Street movies, has been haunting her dreams. As she works, Kristen blasts loud music, eats coffee from the jar, and swigs cola in an attempt to stay awake. Kristen's mother bursts in, annoyed that her daughter is still awake, and reveals that Kristen has been seeing a therapist for her nightmares. Mom is accompanied by a guy she has met and is in a hurry to return to him. She tucks Kristen in and goes downstairs, leaving Kristen to fall asleep. Kristen awakes in her dream to find her bed in front of the Elm Street house. Children play outside, singing the infamous Freddy rhyme as they jump rope. A little girl on a red tricycle waits on the porch of the house as Kristen approaches cautiously. Kristen speaks to the little girl. We hear Freddy's blade scrape and the little girl turns and rides inside. Kristen follows her, pleading with her not to go into the house. "This is where he takes us," the little girl announces as a boiler bursts into life. "Freddy's home!" Kristen grabs the girl and rushes towards the door, becoming trapped as the floor melts. Freddy chases her as she runs around the corner into hanging bodies. "Put me down, you're hurting me," the little girl asks. Kristen looks down to see that she is clutching a dead and rotting body. She screams and wakes in her bed. Kristen goes to the bathroom, unsettled by her nightmare. She goes to turn on the tap, but it turns into a hand, gripping her and holding her in place before she sees the image of Freddy Krueger appear in the mirror. The second tap also turns into a hand, with tiny blades at the end, like Freddy's claw. Freddy slices across Kristen's wrist, her screams finally bringing her mom. As Kristen's mom bursts into the bathroom, Kristen wakes properly to find herself clutching a razor blade, blood oozing from her wrist, and passes out. The next scene takes us to Weston Hills Psychiatric Hospital. Max, the orderly, and Dr. Gordon discuss a rash of teen suicides that have swept the area. They meet Taryn, a girl not sleeping, and Jennifer, a girl who has been self-harming, putting cigarettes out on her arms. He looks in on another boy in solitary for his violent outbursts. Dr. Sims approaches and they talk about a new member of staff who has just left grad school, but has been making lots of progress with pattern nightmares. Dr. Gordon is not keen on someone using his kids to further their career. At that moment, an emergency message asks for both doctors to go to the examination rooms. Screaming can be heard as Elaine Parker discusses with a nurse her daughter's attention-seeking behavior. As the doctors enter the room, we see Kristen fighting and screaming hysterically as doctors try to sedate her. She grabs a scalpel and begins to recite the rhyme. 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you, 3, 4. Better lock your door, 5, 6, grab your crucifix, 7, 8. Better stays up late, 9, 10. Never go to sleep again. She can't bring herself to speak the last line. Someone completes the last line, never sleep again, and everyone turns to see Nancy standing in the doorway. Nancy walks in and calmly takes the scalpel from Kristen before pulling her into a hug. Nancy asks Dr. Gordon about the kids who all suffer from sleep disorders, including insomnia, narcolepsy, and bedwetting, but all have nightmares in common. He believes they share a group delusion of a boogeyman, which scares them so much they will do anything not to sleep. He elaborates on the story of a young boy who used razor blades to cut off his eyelids to stop him from sleeping. He praises her for dealing with Kristen, and she reveals that she has had some experience with pattern nightmares. As she leaves, she drops her handbag and we see that Nancy is taking medication. He recommends she speak to Max and watch her leave. As he turns, Dr. Gordon sees a nun dressed all in white, who seems to then disappear. Max shows Nancy to an office she can use and introduces her to some of the patients. First is Philip, nicknamed the Walker because he sleepwalks and makes puppets. He shares a room with Kincaid, the boy who was in solitary. Max jokes that Nancy should memorize his face as Kincaid spends so much time in solitary she won't see much of him. Another patient, Joey, leaves his room to help a young nurse pick up towels which has fallen from her trolley. Kristen's mother, Elaine, and Nancy meet at their house to discuss her nightmares. Elaine is very dismissive, believing Kristen is just acting out and looking for attention. She tells Nancy she has packed a suitcase of Kristen's belongings and directs Nancy to her room to get them. Nancy sees the model of her old house which Kristen had been working on. Dr. Gordon looks up Hypnosil, the medication he had seen in Nancy's bag, a dream suppressant. We return to Kristen, who is in bed drawing the Elm Street house. As she begins to doze, the door to her room creaks open and a red tricycle wheels in before melting on the floor. She edges out of the room and finds herself back in the house. A stale barbecued pig with an apple in its mouth is on the table, and flies buzz around before it leaps out at her. Kristen explores as a lump appears under the carpet and gashes in the walls. A huge snake with Freddy's face bursts out of the floor and begins to eat its way up Kristen's body. She screams for Nancy, and we see Nancy startled from her sleep. She looks at Kristen's model, which she has taken home with her, and hears Kristen scream again. Nancy passes out and falls through the chair to find herself in Kristen's dream. Nancy grabs a shard of broken mirror and stabs it into the eye of the snake, causing it to drop Kristen. "You!" Freddy hisses. Unable to believe it, Nancy grabs Kristen and begs her to run. They hide behind a door and Nancy tells Kristen to get them back out. They disappear as Freddy crashes through the door and Nancy awakes back in her chair with a cut on her hand from the mirror. The next morning, Nancy brings the model to Kristen, telling her it is where she used to live. She asks if she has ever pulled anyone into her dream the way she did. Kristen confides that when she was a child, she would pull her dad into her dreams if they were scary, allowing him to believe that they were his dreams instead. After her parents divorced, it stopped, and after a while, Kristen thought she had simply imagined the whole thing. Kristen asks about the man in her dreams, and Nancy assures her he is real. In the group, Dr. Gordon tells the kids that it is straight talk only, and then he and Dr. Sims introduce Nancy to the rest of the patients. Will Stanton is the first to introduce himself. He tells Nancy he had an accident, gesturing to the wheelchair he is sitting in. Taryn reveals, though, that he was injured in a suicide jump, not an accident. Kincaid jumps to Will's defense and reveals that Taryn was a junkie, injecting into her arms. Jennifer Caulfield shares that she wants to be an actress on TV when she leaves the hospital. Jennifer goes on to introduce Joey, who doesn't speak. Taryn White is the next to introduce herself. She admits she is going through some very strange shit with her dreams and that the hospital is a better alternative to Juvie Hall. Philip interrupts to say that the doctors all believe their dreams are group psychosis, despite the fact they all dreamt about Freddy before they had met, and as a result just seemed to go around in circles. Dr. Sims tells him they will not make any progress until the teens can accept the dreams as byproducts of guilt, psychological scars stemming from moral conflicts and overt sexuality. Taryn, Will, and Joey play Dungeons and Dragons until Max comes to tell them that it is lights out. After Max and Taryn leave, it is revealed that the boys take shifts to sleep. Nancy and Neil Gordon are getting coffee. He asks about Nancy's parents. She says her mom died in her sleep and that she and her father don't have a good relationship. She tells Neil that the teens are in real physical danger from their dreams, and he asks her about the hypnosil she has been taking. He seems shocked that Nancy wants him to prescribe the drug to the kids. She confides she used to be like them and tells Neil that their survival depends on it, but he refuses. One of Phillips's puppets comes to life, morphing into a mini Krueger. Making its way to Philip's bed, it turns into Freddy. Freddy cuts the veins in Philip's arms and legs, creating puppet strings. Kincaid sees Philip being manipulated out of the room, but thinking he is sleepwalking doesn't wake him. Freddy makes Philip walk out of the ward and up the hospital tower. Joey sees Philip standing at the edge of the ledge, waking Will and carrying him to the window. Joey tries to get help, banging a tray as he runs along the corridor to wake people. Will shouts from the window trying to wake Philip. The group gathers to see Philip fall to his death as Freddy cuts his strings. In the group the next morning, the kids are all upset. Kincaid is annoyed, blaming Phillips's death on his weakness. Dr. Gordon tries to tell them that it was suicide, which the others do not believe. Taryn says it was murder. Dr. Sims tells the teens that to prevent a reoccurrence, all rooms will be locked at night and they will be sedated. This freaks Kincaid out, and as he gets irate, Dr. Sims beeps for security, and he is sent to isolation once more. He is dragged away, and despite Nancy's protests, Sims says she is going to begin sedation that night. Neil decides to prescribe hypnosil, despite Sims's reservations. Kincaid is locked in the quiet room, struggling to sleep. Jennifer is watching TV as research in the common room. Max tries to make her go back to her room, but seeing she is upset allows her to stay so she doesn't sleep. Taryn has been showering and is accosted by an orderly who offers her the keys to the dispensary. She says that she doesn't do that anymore and goes to her room. Jennifer finds a cigarette, lights it, and then burns her hand to keep herself awake. She flicks through the channels, stopping on the Dick Cavett show, which has Zsa Zsa Gabor as the guest. After a few minutes, Cavett suddenly turns into Freddy and attacks Gabor, after which the signal cuts out. Screams and the rhyme can be heard as Jennifer goes over to the TV. Arms burst out of the side of the television and grab Jennifer before Freddy's head emerged from the top. Freddy shouts, "Welcome to primetime, bitch," before fatally ramming Jennifer's head through the screen. Neil watches at her funeral from a distance. The nun he saw earlier approaches him and asks him about his faith. He tells her that he has seen her before and asks if Sister Mary Helena does volunteer work at the hospital. She says she does from time to time, when needed, and tells him that the only way to save the children is to put the unquiet spirit to rest. Nancy approaches, and when he turns around, the nun has disappeared. Neil and Nancy share a meal, and he sees Nancy's Malaysian dream doll, which is supposed to bring good dreams. He's worried about the kids and doesn't know what to do. He can't make sense of it. Nancy wonders if he's ready to hear the truth, telling him to put everything else aside and just trust her. In the group, unofficially, Neil allows Nancy to tell the kids about Freddy. Although skeptical at first when she describes his dirty brown hat, his burnt face, and the razors on his right hand, they believe her. She tells them that the man is Freddy Krueger, a child murderer before he died, and after something much worse. She shares the fact that 6 years ago he had killed her friends and almost killed her as revenge for his death. Their parents had burnt him alive after a mistake with a search warrant leading to his arrest, causing all charges to be dropped and Krueger to go free. Although unable to believe it at first, the kids do believe it. Nancy reveals Kristen's gift and tells the others that she is the key, but that they all have their inner strengths they can harness in the dream world. Neil tells them they are going to try a little group hypnosis. He gets them to relax and follow a pendulum, as Nancy tells Kristen to take them to the dream world. At first, little seems to have changed. They are in the same room and decide to take a break before trying again. Joey wanders out of the room, spotting the young nurse he helped previously. She tells him that she wants to talk to him alone as she likes him. She claims that she makes up excuses to come into the ward as he is so cute. Dr. Gordon sets off a perpetual motion device, and the ball bearings break away and float around the room, revealing that they are dreaming, despite initial appearances. Neil struggles to believe till Will stands up. In his dreams, he can walk and is the Wizard Master, which he demonstrates by turning a ball bearing into a butterfly. Kristen can backflip and somersault in her dreams. Kincaid is super strong, and Taryn is beautiful and bad. But in the feel, she looks the ugliest punk girl you could ever imagine. Joey is in the room with the nurse. She asks him to unzip her uniform, revealing she is topless underneath. Asking if he likes her body, Joey nods enthusiastically. She pushes him back on the bed and kisses him before biting his tongue and pulling it from his mouth. Tongues are used to bind Joey's wrists and ankles, and the nurse is revealed to be Krueger. Feeling tongue-tied, he asks. The mattress disappears to reveal a hell pit. At this moment, the others realize that Freddy is close and he has Joey. The room morphs into a boiler room despite Kincaid's attempts to stop it. The screams alert Dr. Sims, who is not happy. Joey is on the floor, seemingly in a coma. This is blamed on the hypnosol Dr. Gordon has prescribed, and both he and Nancy are suspended. As he clears out his stuff, Neil looks at a photograph and is then distracted by Sister Mary Helena in the tower. The door is locked, but Neil breaks in and climbs the tower. The nun is at the top of the tower. She reveals that the room was once used to house the most dangerous, criminally insane patients at the hospital. The wing was closed in the 40s after a young girl was locked in the wing over the holidays. The inmates kept her hidden for days, raping her hundreds of times. When she was found, she was barely alive and was most unfortunately impregnated. The girl was Amanda Krueger, Freddy's mom. She tells Neil that the only way to stop Freddy is to find his remains and then bury them in hallowed ground. Nancy visits with Joey. She demands that Freddy release him. The words "come and get him, bitch" appear carved on his chest. Nancy wants to go into the dream realm and fight Freddy, but Neil tells her they have another option. She agrees to try, and she tells him that only one man will know the whereabouts of the remains. Kristen fights against staff as it is revealed that Nancy has been suspended. She is taken to the quiet room and sedated for her outburst, screaming that Dr. Sims is killing them. The man Nancy referred to is revealed to be her dad. They meet him in a bar and he is drunk, and although initially pleased to see her, when Nancy reveals the reason for the visit, is less happy. He insists Nancy just needs to let it go because Krueger is dead. Despite Nancy's pleas, he refuses to reveal where the bones are and dismisses her. Nancy is very upset. Taryn pages Dr. Gordon, informing him that Kristen has been sedated and locked in the quiet room. He urges Nancy to go to the hospital and to convince Dr. Sims what is happening is real. He tells her he will speak to her father and make him tell the location of Freddy's remains. He goes back into the bar, introduces himself, and then throws Lieutenant Donald Thompson against the wall. Neil says that he cares if Nancy lives or dies, even if her father doesn't, and so they are going on a scavenger hunt. Neil drives them to a church, takes the keys, and leaving Donald outside, goes to get holy water and a crucifix. He is stopped by a priest and leaves his driving license in return for the things he needs, promising to return them. Nancy arrives at the hospital and Max prevents her from seeing Kristen, but reluctantly agrees to let her see the others. She finds them in the TV room and takes them for a last group session. Neil and Nancy's dad pull up at the Penny Brothers auto salvage yard, the hiding place of Freddy's remains. Going inside, Neil is directed to the heart of the place. Nancy tells Kincaid, Will, and Taryn that Joey and Kristen need them. She assures them nobody has to go in, warning them if they die in the dream world, then they die for real. They all want in, so urging them to stick together, they imagine themselves in the quiet room with Kristen. When Nancy counts back from 5, they are there in the room with Kristen, who is delighted to see them. Kristen says that Joey needs them. Nancy asks where he is, and at that moment the padded walls are ripped to shreds by Freddy's claws. Terrified, the group huddles in the center of the room, padding showering them. As the padding clears, Kristen is back in her bedroom working on the model house as she was the night of her suicide attempt. She is surprised as her mom bursts in and the night repeats itself. She gives her mom a huge hug, telling her she has had a terrible dream. She asks her mom to stay with her, but her mom has a guest. This time it turns out to be Freddy, who rips Elaine's head off, and the decapitated head admonishes Kristen for her attention-seeking behavior. Freddy tries to stab Kristen, but she uses her gymnastic skills to evade him. She jumps out the window, but instead of landing outside, finds herself in the Elm Street house, rolling down the stairs. Getting to her feet, Kristen calls for Nancy. She is heard by Taryn, who tries to find her, instead finding herself in an alley. A wall appears behind her, with Taryn and Freddy and a heart sprayed on it, trapping her. Taryn is shocked by Freddy, who says, "Welcome home. Look familiar?" Taryn uses flick knives to fight Freddy, stabbing him in the stomach. Freddy asks why they are fighting when they are old friends and holds his hands up to reveal syringes of blue liquid instead of blades. Taryn backs away as the injection marks on her arm begin to suck. Freddy plunges both sets of syringes into Taryn, throwing her aside, dead. "What a rush," he declares. Will finds himself in a long passageway. He calls out for the others, hearing Freddy laugh. He turns to find a wheelchair. Freddy invites him to sit, reminding him he will be back in it when he wakes up. The chair chases Will, causing him to fall. He calls on his wizard master powers. Rising to his feet, Will shouts, "In the name of Lorek, Prince of Elves, demon be gone," and blasts Freddy with green light. He runs towards Freddy, who grabs him. Saying he doesn't believe in fairy tales, he plunges his blades into Will's chest, killing him too. Kristen continues her search for the others, finally finding Nancy. The wall to the room begins to break and Kincaid is revealed, using his super strength to reunite them. They embrace and Kincaid shouts for Freddy. A door to the boiler room appears behind them. Nancy leads the way down a spiral staircase to search for Freddy. Meanwhile, Neil and Donald finally reach the center of the salvage yard. Donald directs Neil to a red caddy. After a struggle, he opens the boot to reveal the remains of Fred Krueger wrapped in a sack. Donald tries to escape, but Neil has the keys and tells him he is going to attend a funeral, one that is long overdue. He throws him a spade. Nancy and the others reach the bottom of the staircase to find Joey suspended over a hell pit. Freddy appears, and when Nancy tells him to let Joey go, he undoes the tongue bindings. Nancy reaches Joey just in time to stop him from falling. Kristen attacks Freddy as Kincaid pulls Nancy and Joey to safety. He strikes Freddy with a length of pipe, and when Freddy grabs him by the throat, Nancy drives a thin lead pipe through him. His shock quickly turns to a sinister smile, and still holding Kincaid by the throat, he pulls it out, discarding it. Nancy cannot believe how strong Freddy has become. He informs her that the souls of the children make him strong, pulling aside his jumper to reveal the faces of screaming children on his torso. Then he disappears, causing Kincaid to fall to the floor. In the real world at the salvage yard, Neil and Nancy's father have dug a grave. They stop when Neil hears noises, and after Donald assures him that they are alone, all the cars come to life, lights flashing, boots and doors flapping and horns blasting. Donald screams, "Bury the fucking thing!" But as Neil approaches the remains, the skeleton reanimates, taking swipes at him with his bladed hand. Donald stands, shocked. "It's you! I killed you once before, you son of a bitch!" Donald attacks but ends up impaled on a spike of metal. Neil attempts to fight Freddy but is hit with the spade and knocked into the grave. Freddy begins to shovel dirt onto him as he lies unconscious. Laughing, the skeleton collapses and Freddy returns to the dream realm. Nancy, Kristen, Kincaid, and Joey are walking along a corridor, papered in red and decorated with mirrors. A large mirror appears, blocking their path, and then Freddy appears. He apologizes for keeping them waiting and says, "If only there was more of me to go around." His image then appears, laughing in all of the mirrors. Joey backs into a corner, clearly scared. Freddy grabs the others, dragging them into the mirrors. Joey stands and screams, "No!" All the mirrors smash, freeing the others. They believe it to be over. Nancy's father appears, telling her he has crossed over, but can't go without telling her that he is sorry for all the things he has done and that he loves her. Nancy embraces her father and then gasps as her father turns into Freddy and plunges his claws into her stomach. "Die," he snarls as he pushes the blades in deeper. Neil finally awakens, semi-buried in the grave. Kristen screams and Freddy causes the door behind her to close, separating her from Kincaid and Joey. "You're mine now, little piggy." He tosses Nancy aside and knocks Kristen to the floor. Holding his arm back, he is about to stab her when Nancy grabs him, forcing his blades into himself instead. Neil climbs out of the grave, kicks in the bones of Krueger, and splashes them with holy water. As he does, rays of holy spiritual light appear on Freddy's torso. Nancy is once more tossed aside, landing by Kristen. Neil continues to splash holy water. "Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, I lay this spirit to rest." He places the crucifix on his head, causing Freddy to spin and explode in a ball of golden light, a cross of light on his forehead. Kristen sobs as Kincaid breaks down the door. Kristen says she won't let Nancy die and will instead dream her into a beautiful dream. Kristen holds Nancy's dead body. Kincaid, Joey, Kristen, and Neil all attend Nancy's funeral, Neil with a sling on his arm. He turns to see the nun, Sister Mary Helena, walking through the graveyard. He follows her, but before he can speak to her, she disappears. He looks down at the grave he is standing on to see it is Amanda Krueger, and also bears the name Sister Mary Helena, revealing the nun to be the ghost of Freddy Krueger's mother. Neil sleeps as the shot reveals that he is now in possession of the Malaysian Dream Doll and Kristen's model of 1428 Elm Street. As he sleeps, the bedroom light in the model comes on, hinting Freddy may be back after all. Elm Street, Springwood, USA. Kristen, one of the sole survivors of an earlier epidemic of teenage deaths on Elm Street, is reliving her former terror as child murderer Freddy Krueger returns to haunt her dreams. At first, only fellow survivors Kincaid and Joey share Kristen's secret, when she uses her psychic gift to draw them into her nightmares to witness the return of razor-gloved Freddy Krueger, the bastard son of 100 maniacs. Joey and Kincaid are not convinced that Freddy is back until one by one, Freddy begins to claim his surviving victims and target fresh prey. Unsuspecting Elm Street youth not formerly exposed to Freddy's revenge for being burned alive by vigilante parents, avenging the deaths of their murdered children. Kincaid is the first to sleep to his death. In his nightmare, he is locked in the trunk of a car. Escaping, he finds himself in a junkyard. Suddenly, the earth rumbles and cracks open to reveal the charred remains of Freddy Krueger's grave. Burned flesh forms over the skeletal shell. Freddy is back, in the flesh. Kincaid's attempt to crush Freddy with a car fails, and Freddy pierces Kincaid's heart with his trademark blades. Kincaid awakes in his bedroom moments later, mortally wounded. Meanwhile, Joey experiences his hellish fatal nightmare when a nude poster girl suddenly beckons him from inside his waterbed. As Joey spreads his arms, the naked beauty transforms into Freddy, slashing his way through the plastic waterbed to capture Joey in a death grip. Joey's mother discovers his drowned body the next morning. When Joey and Kincaid are found dead, Kristen intimates to newcomer Alice that her friends were murdered by Freddy Krueger in their nightmares. Alice is convinced of Freddy's lethal power after Kristen draws her into a nightmare to experience the very real terror. Together, they decide to do battle with the deathly Elm Street menace, Freddy Krueger. They share their fears with friends Sheila, a scholastic genius, Alice's brother Rick, a martial arts expert who is also Kristen's boyfriend, Debbie, an attractive bodybuilder, and Dan, the handsome object of Alice's schoolgirl crush. No one will believe them. Alice, the neglected daughter of an alcoholic father, unveils her theory on the Dream Master, the guardian of good dreams. She explains that weary victims should summon up the Dream Master and visualize positive scenarios to avoid contact with evil. After her mother drugs her with sleeping pills, Kristen has a chance to put this theory to the test. She forces herself to dream of a warm, sandy beach, only to face a fatal encounter with Freddy Krueger, who appears out of the ocean and stomps her into the sand. Alice is pulled into Kristen's nightmare but is unable to prevent her fall through the sand to Freddy's boiler room. Before burning to death in the furnace, Kristen's psychic powers are meshed with Alice's being. Alice is now burdened with the powerful vision of witnessing her Elm Street friends' slaughter, as Freddy continues to claim their lives one by one. Sheila is next. While dozing off during a physics exam, Freddy materializes as a teacher who sucks the breath from Sheila. Her asthmatic condition is cited to explain the death. Rick is next to go when slumber finds him falling into Hell's Inferno, better known as Freddy's boiler room. Alice realizes that by inheriting Kristen's ability to dream together, she has been leading Freddy to new victims. In addition to Kristen's powers, Alice has also acquired the strengths of her deceased friends. She decides that she must wage battle with Freddy alone. Dan, finally convinced of Freddy's existence, agrees to meet Alice at the Crave Inn, the local diner where she works, to discuss her battle plan. To stay awake and pass the time before their meeting, Alice stops at a local movie theater. Slipping into sleep, Alice dreams she sees the Crave Inn on the screen. A hurricane-force wind pulls her right through the screen and into the Crave Inn, where she finds herself seated beside Freddy at the counter. The waitress brings her a pizza. The pepperonis are miniature screaming faces of Kristen, Sheila, and Rick. Later, Alice is with Dan in his truck, and her friend Debbie is in her attic lifting weights. Freddy appears, breaks Debbie's arms, and she begins to shrink into a cockroach. Alice tries to get into Debbie's nightmare to help her, but she is now trapped inside a roach motel. Alice is too late. Debbie is dead. Dan and Alice continue speeding down the road as Freddy stands in the way of the truck. Alice attempts to run him over but drives right through him and smashes into a void. Dan is injured and taken to a hospital, where he will undergo surgery in 15 minutes. Alice realizes that she will have to fight Freddy before Dan is forced to sleep. Alice races back to her house and takes some sleeping pills. She's ready for a battle with Freddy. As she looks in the mirror, she gasps at her transformed image. Alice looks down and sees a large piece of stained glass. She picks it up and holds it in front of Freddy. As he is about to slice into Alice, light hits Freddy off the glass like a blast. Freddy sees himself reflected in the glass. As he screams, the trapped souls of the dead children begin fearing through Freddy's body. Freddy's sweater stretches and rips apart as all the tiny bodies trapped inside try to escape. Finally, Freddy's head explodes and the souls are released. Freddy is dead. Alice stands alone, not dressed like the Dream Master anymore. Having fulfilled her mission, she is just Alice again, but retains her beauty and confidence. A few weeks later, Alice and Dan, with their arms around each other, walk through the park. As they walk away from a fountain, Freddy's reflection appears and fades on the water's surface. Alice and Dan, involved with each other, don't notice and continue. Alice and Dan have started dating, and there are no signs of Freddy Krueger. One day, while taking a shower after having sex with Dan, she has a vision of herself dressed in a nun's habit with a name tag saying Amanda Krueger at a strange asylum. She is attacked by patients at the hospital but wakes up. The next day, Alice is graduating from high school alongside her new friends. Greta, an aspiring but reluctant supermodel, Mark, a comic book fan, and Yvonne, a hospital volunteer and swimmer. Alice confides her nightmare to Dan, who tells her she is in control of her dreams. On her way to work, Alice finds herself back at the asylum, where she sees Amanda giving birth to a gruesomely deformed baby. Amanda tries to collect the baby before it escapes, but it sneaks out of the operating room. Alice follows the baby into the church where she defeats Freddy in the previous film. The baby finds Freddy's remains and quickly grows into an adult, hinting to Alice that he has found the key to coming back. Alarmed, she contacts Dan, who falls asleep en route to see her. Freddy attacks and electrocutes Dan, turning him into a frightful man-machine hybrid before veering him into oncoming traffic. Alice sees Dan's body come to life and taunts her before she faints. Waking in a hospital, she hears the news of Dan's death and that she is pregnant with his child. During the night, she is visited by a young boy named Jacob. But the next day, Yvonne tells her there are no children on her floor, nor is there a children's ward. Alice tells her friends about Freddy and his lineage. Yvonne refuses to listen, but Mark and Greta are more supportive. That afternoon, at a dinner party at her home, Greta falls asleep at the table. She dreams of snapping at her mother and ranting over her controlling nature before Freddy arrives and forces Greta to eat her organs before choking her in front of a laughing audience. In the real world, Greta falls dead in front of her mother and their guests. Yvonne and Alice visit Mark, who is grieving Greta's death, and a rift forms between them. Mark falls asleep and is nearly killed by Freddy, but Alice saves him before seeing Jacob again. Jacob hints that Alice is his mother. Alice requests that Yvonne get her an early ultrasound and discovers Freddy is using Jacob as a conduit to attack her friends even when she's awake, and has been feeding him his victims to make him like himself. Yvonne and Dan's parents still believe Alice is crazy. Dan's parents insist that she give them the baby when it is born, which Alice refuses. Alice and Mark research Krueger and the nun Amanda. Realizing Amanda was trying to stop Freddy, they investigate her whereabouts, and Alice goes to sleep, hoping to find Amanda at the asylum. While there, Freddy lures her away by threatening Yvonne, who has fallen asleep in a jacuzzi. Alice rescues Yvonne, who finally believes her. Mark falls asleep and is pulled into a comic book world where, after becoming a superhero to fight him, Freddy becomes a supervillain, turns him into a paper cutout, and slashes him to pieces. Alice goes to bed to find Freddy and saves her son. Realizing Freddy has been hiding in her every time she falls asleep, she draws Freddy out from within herself. Yvonne finds Amanda's remains at the asylum, and Amanda joins the fight in the dream world, encouraging Jacob to use the power Freddy had been giving him. Jacob destroys Freddy, and his infant form is absorbed by his mother, while Alice picks up a baby Jacob. Warning Alice away, Amanda seals Freddy away in time. Several months later, Jacob Daniel Johnson is enjoying a picnic with his mother, grandfather, and Yvonne. Some children jumping rope nearby are humming Freddy's rhyme, hinting at Freddy's return. Freddy Krueger has returned and killed nearly every child and teenager in the town of Springwood, Ohio. The only surviving teenager, John Doe, is confronted by Freddy in a dream. John wakes up just outside the Springwood city limits, but due to a head injury, does not remember who he is or why he is there. At a shelter for troubled youth, 3 of the residents, Spencer, an affluent stoner who is resisting his dad's attempts to get him to conform, Carlos, a troubled kid who is physically abused by his mother to the point of becoming deaf in one ear, and Tracy, a tough girl who was sexually abused by her father, plot to run away to California. The police find John and take him to the shelter, where he becomes a patient of Dr. Maggie Burrows. Maggie notices a newspaper clipping from Springwood in John's pocket. To attempt to cure John's amnesia, she plans a road trip to Springwood. In an attempt to run away, Tracy, Carlos, and Spencer stow away in the van. But they are discovered when John has a hallucination and almost wrecks the van just outside Springwood. Tracy, Spencer, and Carlos attempt to leave Springwood, but not before stopping to rest at the abandoned 1428 Elm Street house. John and Maggie visit the Springwood orphanage and discover that Freddy has a child. John believes he is that child because Freddy allowed him to live. Back on Elm Street, Carlos and Spencer fall asleep and are killed by Freddy. Tracy is almost killed but is awakened by Maggie. John, who went into the dream world with Tracy to try to help Spencer, is still asleep. Maggie and Tracy take John back to the shelter. On their way back, Krueger attacks John in his dream. Before killing John, Krueger reveals that his child is a girl. As John dies, he tells this to Maggie. Tracy and Maggie return to the shelter, but they find that no one remembers John, Spencer, or Carlos except for Doc, who has learned to control his dreams. Maggie finds her adoption papers and realizes that she is Freddy's daughter. Her birth name was Catherine Krueger, but her name was changed to Maggie Burrows when her father was arrested and subsequently murdered. Doc discovers that Freddy's power comes from dream demons who continually revive him, and that Freddy can be killed if he is pulled into the real world. Maggie decides that she will be the one to enter Freddy's mind and pull him into the real world. Once in the dream world, she puts on a pair of 3D glasses and enters Freddy's mind. In his mind, she learns that Freddy was teased as a child, was abused by his foster father, inflicted self-abuse as a teenager, and murdered his wife when she discovered his murderous tendencies. Freddy was given the power to become immortal by fiery demons. Maggie struggles to pull Freddy into the real world, but eventually succeeds. Maggie and Freddy end up in hand-to-hand combat against each other. She uses several weapons confiscated from patients at the shelter. Enraged by the knowledge of what he has done, Maggie tears off Freddy's clawed glove and stabs him through the stomach with it, embedding the glove's claws into a steel support beam and leaving Freddy suspended above the ground. Tracy tosses Maggie a pipe bomb, which she throws into Freddy's chest. The three dream demons, unable to revive him in the real world, fly out of Freddy after the pipe bomb kills him. Tracy, Doc, and Maggie rejoice as the latter triumphantly declares, "Freddy's dead." Since his last defeat, Freddy Krueger had festered in the fiery depths of hell, nursing his insatiable thirst for terror. His malevolent spirit, seething with rage and desperation, clawed its way back to the realm of the living, fueled by a burning desire for vengeance and power. Springwood, Ohio, once a serene town, now bore the scars of Freddy's reign of terror. The adults, haunted by the memories of their children's screams, waged a relentless campaign to purge all recollection of the nightmare incarnate. They scrubbed away his name from every record, consigned his atrocities to oblivion, and forced the children to swallow the bitter pill of forgetfulness, drenched in the mind-numbing elixir of hypnosol. But Freddy, cunning and relentless, found a crack in their armor. With twisted ingenuity, he resurrected the silent sentinel of slaughter, Jason Voorhees, shaping his ghastly visage into that of Jason's mother, Pamela, manipulating the mute behemoth to do his bidding. Laurie Campbell, innocent yet marked by destiny, found herself ensnared in Freddy's web of nightmares. In the shelter of her home where warmth once dwelled, now only shadows crept, whispering dreadful secrets. As she gathered with her friends for what should have been an evening of laughter and camaraderie, they unknowingly danced on the precipice of an abyss. Trey's blood-curdling screams shattered the tranquility, his life snuffed out by the cold, merciless grip of Jason's blade. The police, oblivious to the true horror that lurked in the darkness, cast accusations at Freddy's spectral form, masking the true terror that prowled the streets. In the bowels of Weston Hills, where the lost souls languished, Will Rollins and Mark Davis, tormented by their past encounters with Freddy, clawed their way out of confinement, driven by a primal instinct to warn Laurie of the encroaching nightmare. A haze of dread descended upon the town as the night descended, shrouding the unsuspecting revelers in its suffocating embrace. At the rave, where pulsating beats drowned out the whispers of fear, Freddy's tendrils snaked through the dreams of the unsuspecting, only to be met with the savage fury of Jason's rampage. Amidst the chaos, Laurie and her allies, their minds aflame with terror, embarked on a desperate quest for salvation. Their journey led them through the corridors of madness, where the boundary between reality and nightmare blurred into a grotesque tapestry of horrors. As Freddy and Jason clashed in a cataclysmic duel, the air thickened with the stench of blood and desperation. Limbs rent asunder, screams echoed through the night, and the very fabric of reality trembled under the weight of their malice. In a final act of defiance, Laurie, her spirit aflame with righteous fury, beckoned Freddy into the realm of flesh and blood. There, amidst the charnel house of Camp Crystal Lake, the stage was set for a showdown of apocalyptic proportions. In a frenzy of violence where every blow struck resonated with the agony of 1,000 tortured souls, Freddy and Jason battled for supremacy. Each slash of Freddy's clawed glove, each swing of Jason's rusted machete, heralded the death knell of innocence. And as the embers of dawn painted the sky crimson, the victor emerged from the carnage, bathed in the blood of his vanquished foe. But even as the first rays of sunlight pierced the veil of darkness, casting long shadows upon the scorched earth, whispers lingered in the wind, foretelling of nightmares yet to come. For in the depths of the abyss where darkness reigns eternal, the true horror awaits, biding its time until the next cycle of terror begins anew. Heather Langenkamp resides in the bustling city of Los Angeles, California, alongside her loving husband Chase and their young son Dylan. While renowned for her iconic portrayal of Nancy Thompson in the A Nightmare on Elm Street series, Heather has since shifted her focus to television work. However, her past roles come back to haunt her in a most terrifying manner. One fateful night, Heather experiences a chilling nightmare, wherein her family is menaced by a set of sinister animated Freddy Krueger claws from an upcoming nightmare film. Strangely, a seismic event coincides with her awakening, and she notices a peculiar cut on Chase's finger, eerily mirroring the one inflicted in her dream. Despite her unease, Heather dismisses the incident as mere coincidence. Her world is further rattled when she receives a disturbing phone call from an obsessed fan, ominously reciting Freddy Krueger's nursery rhyme in a voice reminiscent of the deranged villain. This unsettling encounter coincides with a meeting at New Line Cinema, where Heather is pitched the idea of reprising her iconic role as Nancy in a new Nightmare film, a project secretly spearheaded by Chase. Back at home, Dylan's innocent fascination with his mother's past roles takes a chilling turn when he suffers a traumatic episode while watching her original film. Heather's concerns escalate as Dylan's behavior grows increasingly erratic, exacerbated by Chase's tragic demise in a fatal accident. Desperate for answers, Heather turns to her longtime friend and former co-star John Saxon, who reveals a disturbing revelation about the true nature of the Nightmare franchise. According to Saxon, the films inadvertently tapped into an ancient supernatural entity, now unleashed upon the world in the guise of Freddy Krueger. With Dylan's health deteriorating and reality beginning to blur with the Nightmare realm, Heather seeks guidance from Nightmare creator Wes Craven, who unveils the sinister truth behind the entity's intentions. Realizing that her son's life is in peril, Heather embarks on a harrowing journey into Freddy's domain to rescue Dylan from the clutches of evil. In a climactic showdown, Heather confronts Freddy in a nightmarish landscape, ultimately vanquishing the malevolent entity and saving her son. Emerging victorious, Heather and Dylan find solace in the comforting embrace of reality, albeit with a lingering sense of uncertainty. As Heather tucks Dylan into bed, she discovers a screenplay detailing their recent ordeal, a testament to their triumph over darkness. With a sense of closure and newfound strength, Heather reads from the script, embracing the power of storytelling to overcome fear and uncertainty.